is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering The Dark Tower, Book 5, Wolves of the Calla, Part 2, Chapter 4, The Priest's Tale Continued. Open parentheses. Highways in hiding. Close parentheses. In this chapter, I was right. This footbridge is magical. It's a magical bridge. Are there trolls under it? We'll have to wait and see. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha.
I am Miles.
And Miles, have you read these books before?
God, it's been a while since I think I've read this one. I've actually read this one and the first four and the next one and the seventh. No, I'm just kidding.
I was about to be like, oh shit.
Nope.
Chris is going to freak out. Nope.
That was a tease. No, I haven't finished that one yet. But I've read this one and the next one.
Yay!
Have you read these books?
No, I have not. This is actually the only chapter out of any of these books that I've read. So I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, this is going to be super fucking confusing.
No, I have read everything up until this point, and I am totally unspoiled. Had no idea what the series was about when I started. Have not watched the movie. Nothing. I hear that the movie is not probably worth reading. So, or watching.
I mean, if you could read a movie, then it probably, I wouldn't want to read the script.
That, I don't, okay, this is part of what has kept me from reading Cursed Child, is I find reading scripts and plays to be really taxing.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it.
Which is funny, because, that's how you read, when you're in school, that's how you read, Shakespeare and stuff, you know what I mean? You read the plays.
I think that's what did it, is that I hated that so much that it just stuck with me forever that I don't like doing that.
It's just a bizarre way to consume literature. It's a play. You're not supposed to read it. It's supposed to be acted out in front of you.
I just imagine, my teacher trying to get us to act it out instead, because she's like, this is how you're supposed to consume this, and we're just I literally want to die.
If I was a teacher teaching Shakespeare, I wouldn't make him read Shakespeare. I would bring a troupe of actors in to perform Shakespeare.
God.
Amateur actors too, just horrible local community theater people.
Hey, community theater is great, buddy.
If it weren't for community theater, that's how I met my wife.
Aww.
So I love community theater, but we weren't very good actors.
I just had to stick up for everybody. That's all. I just needed to make you into the bad guy for a second. Don't mind me.
That's fine. I have fond memories of being part of community theater. Anyway, there's a book that we should talk about.
Yeah, I think the book is Community Theater is Awesome by Natasha Kingston.
It's actually by Ayn Rand, incidentally.
Oh God,
she was a big fan of community theater. As opposed to community everything else. She hated.
She was like, and by theater, I mean the lead slowly kills off all of the other cast members until it is one large soliloquy. Okay, so for background on some of the things that I'm going to bring up this evening. What? Did you lose me already?
Yeah.
I cannot believe how fast this happens.
I know. Let's just keep going.
So for background, some of the conversation that I'm going to be bringing up, for the October book club, I'm going to be covering Bag of Bones, also by Stephen King.
Which you have been reading.
I finished it today.
Oh, you finished it today?
I did. And
I know that you knew something that happened that you knew was going to happen.
I fucking knew. I should have known going into it. I'm gonna do some spoilers here. If you don't want to be spoiled on Bag of Bones, go ahead and skip ahead about 5 minutes. I'll give you a second to start skipping. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, one. Okay. I should have
All right,
known because I thought it was just going to be like, oh, scary ghost without really like thinking about why the ghost is there.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King does not shy away from racial tension and realities in his stories. And that is a huge part of that book. And that's what I meant when I said I fucking knew it, because there's a point in the beginning where he's like, there was this group here of a black family that was also like a musical family, and they were starting to kind of get famous. And then all of a sudden they just decided that they didn't want to live here anymore, that it was time to move on, and they up and left. And everybody was, always wondered whatever happened to Sarah, because she was the lead singer. And I'm reading it going, oh yeah, they just up and left. Okay, sure. That doesn't happen. And come to find out, who's the angry ghost?
Right.
So I should have known that. And there is a real feeling after having read more of his books for both my show, like this show, and the book club, he is so big into the concept of fucked up townspeople who just basically close ranks even when it is a really, really the wrong thing to do.
Which is one of the, partially I think that's because it's one of the scariest things.
Exactly. I think that's like he zeroes in on a lot of specifics of human nature that are really disturbing and are a fundamental truth, no matter how disturbing they are. Yeah. And he goes for them in a lot of his stories. And I thought it was interesting because you definitely see aspects of that in these books, but it's handled in so many different ways because of how many different places they go. So, you have the flashbacks with Roland, and it's definitely the town closing ranks because of everybody believing that these boys who are outsiders are worthy of fear just based on that.
Mages, yeah.
Yeah. And you have then you have like more supernatural aspects, like when in The Gunslinger, when he just, shoots an entire town to death, whatever. Sure. And then here it's a combination of like everybody is sort of accepting this terrible thing and not really doing anything about it, but also they're not really in a position to be able to do anything about it. Because those who have tried to resist the wolves just get brutally killed.
Right.
So, it's they're not totally. King doesn't saddle them with complete responsibility, but he definitely wants to point out that even once they're presented with a group of people who could potentially be of service, they still kind of just don't want to do anything. Some of them.
Yeah.
And I was just really struck reading Bag of Bones because that's one of his better reviewed books. How many of the sorts of themes come, like reading this after reading it, I already saw some themes coming up, but once I read Bag of Bones, I was like, okay, this is just something that he really loves to come back to. And the idea of going in and out of reality, or different types of reality, and almost doing it seamlessly so that you don't even notice that it's happened until something really strange happens. And then you're like, hold on. And yeah, that is in spades here. I mean, this guy is jumping between different Americas in his sleep, like literally waking up in a different place.
Yeah.
Which I guess is supposed to be a side effect of the vampire blood. Is that what we're supposed to think?
It's unclear. I feel like it's unclear why he can see them. Like, why he can see... Because it says, like, he could see the different pathways, right? Mm-hmm. Which is weird, because, like, he doesn't know where they lead. Like, he has no idea where one like America is going to end and another one's going to begin, right?
Right.
But he can see these highways that it seems like are hidden to most people. I think it's less. I kind of feel like it's less to do with like the vampire blood than it is to do with his particular condition, like in terms of like his mindset and his status in life right now.
Okay.
Like it's a really common trope in a lot of fiction, at least that I've read, where it's like, you know, for example, I'm thinking of the J. Michael Straczynski comic Midnight Nation, where the people like fall through the cracks, right? Like people who are super lonely because they don't have any friends and nobody cares about them, like, you know, or who like are shunned by society for some reason, eventually like vanish from the world. Like regular people literally don't see them anymore.
Okay.
And there's this whole like there's this whole like underground community of people who have slipped through the cracks, so to speak, right?
Okay.
And you know, and there's a lot of stories about, you know, about the people who find these roads. Have you ever seen the film Interstate 60?
Never even heard of it.
Most people haven't. It's a weird movie that was made in 2000. And it's the guy who did Back to the Future, like the director.
Oh, okay.
And it's got I love showing people this movie because it is weirdly star-studded, because it's got like Gary Oldman.
I swear to God, is he in everything? I think he's in everything.
It's like Gary Oldman. It's got Anne Margaret and Chris Cooper and Amy Jo Johnson, who was the Pink Power Ranger, and it's got the dude who played Doc Brown in Back to the Future, Christopher Lloyd. It's all these people that you recognize, and it's this bizarre movie about this dude who just like finds this highway that doesn't exist.
Okay.
And starts going down it and has all these weird adventures. It's got Kurt Russell in it. And these are all they're all tiny roles. They're bit parts. They show up for 15 minutes. You know, like all these really famous actors.
How weird. Okay.
But that's kind of similar. So like, I don't know. It seems like Callahan at this point in his life is, you know, he has gone back to drinking, right? He has fallen off the wagon in a tremendous way. He's fucking killing vampires. His best friend, who he was kind of in love with, is dead. And, like, he has officially lost everything. And sometimes in fiction, when you lose everything, you find these weird roads that people who haven't lost anything don't know exist. That's kind of the feeling I get from it.
Okay.
But it also could be that he has vampire blood in him. Like, that's also a possibility.
Yeah, like, I got the feeling, like, that there's something about that, being able to see them and getting a I feel like it's almost like it has separated him just enough from reality, like put just a tiny little bit of a chink in the normal veneer that he can see through to other things and have access to things that other people wouldn't. But at the same time, if that were true, wouldn't the vampires be able to find these roads too? Which,
well, he does
it's
see
not
some.
Clear if they're following him through to other Americas. Like, he sees them in different Americas, but are they crossing through, or do they just exist in other places?
Right.
And does he also exist in other places? Does he have other versions of himself running around? Because that's something
that's
that, like...
a very good question. What would happen if he ran into one?
Yeah, right? That doesn't... I mean, what if he runs into a version of himself that's doing, like, really well?
Right.
I mean, I feel like... Can you imagine running into a version of yourself in another, and you just look like such a loser in comparison to this other you?
Well,
that would be so discouraging.
It's interesting because what King actually ends up doing with the story is like almost the opposite. Mm-hmm. Because when he eventually finds that newspaper and he realizes that Rowan McGregor and the home shelter have done really well while he's been gone, and like they were on the cover of Newsweek, and Mother Teresa came to visit, and you know wouldn't let anybody wear condoms, but that's fine.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on that woman.
I know. But it's a big deal. Mother Teresa handed out soup, and he's just like, "Holy shit! I missed everything."
Yeah.
Like, I missed all of this while I was spending 5 years. He spends 5 years. That didn't stand out to me the first time I read this book. I was like, oh yeah, you wandered for 5 years. And I read it again. I was like, holy, you wandered for 5 years?
Right. Yeah, this is something that I feel like it's... I was just realizing this actually like yesterday. I have a certain cycle that I go through every time that I move. And it takes me on average about 3 years to feel like I'm settled anywhere. Like,
interesting.
And, you know, I always fool myself into thinking that I can feel settled within a year. Doesn't happen. I move, and usually once I've moved, my stress levels go up and I start to gain weight too. And then after about 3 years, once I'm like feeling like I'm more confident where I am, then the weight starts to come off because I start to be able to like focus on myself rather than just coping with the stress of everything.
So do you at all relate to the whole like wanderlust urge that is discussed in this chapter?
I used to.
Uh-huh.
This is something that sometimes I think maybe I have like either a sociopathic streak or a narcissistic streak. I mean, obviously I have my own whole podcast network in which I speak constantly.
I was going to say, you make a bunch of money off the sound of your own voice.
Right. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a safe bet. I'm pretty sure Brennan would scoff at me and be like, what do you think? Because, which is part of why our relationship probably didn't work out.
Well, the question is, do you like listen to your own podcast and like, I sound good in this one?
I used to listen when we very first started doing them because I was a little bit paranoid mostly that I had like said something that was terrible and I didn't know it or remember it. But that was back when Brennan was the one editing. And now that I edit, I don't listen to them. Like,
sure.
You know,
it's funny. Sharon will catch me sometimes. Like, I'll be reading something on my phone. She's like, what are you reading? I'll be like, nothing. She's like, you're reading something you wrote already, haven't you? I'm like, yeah. Got published a year ago.
I feel like there has to be a little bit of that for some people. Like, different things drive different people. But for me, I've always had trouble feeling connected, really, really connected to other people. And moving for me was never a big deal. I didn't care. I was never that close to anyone that when I left, I felt that bad about it. Like,
talking about like moving from town to town.
Yeah, town to town, state to state, country to country.
Yeah.
I've lived in different countries also, and it was fine. Like, and I would talk to other people who were so homesick. I miss my friends. I was never that way. I was happy to see people again. And there are times now that I'm older that I'm like, I miss like my dad who died. That's not the same thing. And it's just, I've really noticed about myself that it's not until recently in my life that I have felt more like I want to be somewhere and just be there. But when I was a junior in high school, they cut a lot of the arts programs that were important to me, that were some of how I made a lot of my scholarship money to go to college. And I was super pissed. So I looked up other schools to go to. I found a boarding school in California. I applied without telling my parents, and I got almost a full ride, and I just left and went to school by myself in California at a boarding school. Did not give any fucks. And all my friends were like, you're missing out on senior year with all your friends, with your class. I couldn't have cared less. I swear to God. Sometimes I wish that I had stayed just to like for that experience, but most of the time I'm just like, no, why? And same thing going to college. Most of my friends stayed in the state and went to state school, and I didn't. And then the next year when I decided I was not interested in that school, I went to Guatemala, and then I went to London. And then I definitely understand where they're coming from. But at this point in my life, I'm so done with it. Because I've come to realize that you just cannot get away from yourself. No matter where you go, you always think, well, it's going to be a fresh start. It's really going to prod me into doing some, like, creating some new habits. I'm going to be living somewhere, like, you know, with sidewalks, or there's a cafe in walking distance, and I'm going to start want to walk places and do my work out, and maybe I'll meet some people there's a couple classes nearby. I think there's, like, you know, some community college stuff.
All I need is a change of scenery.
All I need is different weather. All I need is a better apartment. All I need are sidewalks, or I need a car, or I need... No. No matter where you go, there you are. And it really is true. And it's a real bummer. It's just such a bummer. Like, I can't emphasize enough how sad I was to find that out. Even if you go somewhere wildly different and exotic, it can teach you something new about yourself. Don't get me wrong. But in the end, unless you, like, most of us, we learn something about ourselves and we just learn it. But do we, like, implement it to, like, do anything to improve who we are? I mean, that's pretty rare. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, so, well, here's one thing. What interests me is that, like, you've stated that it takes you 3 years to get settled into place and to feel comfortable there. Mm-hmm. So when you were on the move, like, you just never felt comfortable or settled anywhere?
Now... I want to feel settled, but then not feeling settled was the thing that I liked.
Gotcha.
So I didn't feel settled, and that was how I wanted it, because I felt like being settled meant that you were giving in a way, that you were that you were giving up, really.
Yeah. It's just interesting because, like, I never lived any place, like, after leaving my parents' house when I was 18, I didn't live in any one place for more than a year for, like, I don't even know how many years. Mm-hmm. Like, I was not, I mean, I think, God, the first, like, I'm pretty sure, so I turned 18 in 2003 and left my folks' place, and then I think the first time that I stayed any place longer than a year, maybe like a year and a half, was I guess it would have been 2011 was when I moved in.
Okay.
So I spent 8 years. And that included like leaving Tucson and going to Chicago and coming back and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I spent 8 years never staying in a place longer than a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds fair.
And then, you know, there was a place in Tucson that I lived with some friends, and I was really happy there. And I was there for a couple of years, and then I went back to school in Flagstaff, and I was at the same place in Flagstaff for a few years. But it's just interesting because, like, I feel almost contradictory desires in that regard.
Okay.
Because Sharon and I are married now, and we're both from, and we're living in Tucson, which is where we're both from. She's never lived anywhere else. And, you know, both of our families are here, and, like, we want to have kids, you know, and we just moved into this house, and we love it. We've been here a month. And we really love it. And, but we really don't want to stay. Mm-hmm. But we do.
Well, there's just there's the inconvenience to be thought of that I think when you get older is really the main thing. It's like, I would be totally down to try out somewhere else, but do I want to do the legwork necessary to make that happen? That's a whole other story.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both still very much have, like, the urge to go new places and see new things. Mm-hmm. But we're also, like, you know, we're in our mid-30s. Well, I mean, I guess we're in our early 30s, I should say. And, you know, and kids have to happen soon if they're going to happen. And, like, you know, it's just, and, you know, well, we do that. Do we want to do that, like, on our own in the strange place where we don't know anyone? Is that really where we want to start doing that? Mm-hmm. Or do we want to have a support system? And it's like... So, yeah, this is all super tangential.
I know, I'm sorry, listeners. You guys are super bored, probably.
It's really interesting to me, though, just thinking about, like, the appeal, because Callahan, when the first place he goes is he starts working in that diner.
Mm-hmm.
And he leaves again, and the dude who hired him is like, hey man, like, I totally get it, and if I didn't have, he says, I want to see how he exactly puts it.
Basically, my wife still fucks.
Right.
Is how that goes.
I really want to find it though. Tell you what, if I didn't have a wife that's still a pretty good lay and 2 kids in college, I might just pack me a bindle and join you. And later on, he says it again.
Mm-hmm.
Where he says, guys like me, kids in school, and a wife that still likes it more than just on Saturday night, they turn up the radio a little louder and drown it out.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is something that Owen and I struggle with a little bit, because Owen he grew up here. Like, he grew up in Oklahoma, but it's a stone's throw away from where we live now, Oklahoma. You can see it from here, literally. Right. And he hasn't moved, and he doesn't really want to, which is something that I don't really understand, because he cares about his friends, whereas I didn't. No offense, my friends, because I have a couple people that I actually did care about and still do, but they're so in the minority that it's hard for me to, like, this is something that I often have wondered about myself. Like, is there just something wrong with me? Why don't I connect with people? And I'm not sure what that is, but it's almost like an oddity about me being as, like, open as I am with my personal shit, that I am so open with everybody that nobody can come close to me, really. That it's like a kind of faux intimacy, telling people about, like, real shit. Mm-hmm. But the one place, if I were to move, that I want to move to again is Philadelphia. Like, I'd like to go back there. And that's very different, because most of my life, when I pictured going somewhere new, it was never back to somewhere I had been. It was always a different place. But part of it is also just growing up. You try out different things, sure, as you get older, and you go wherever a job is and school and whatever.
Yeah. I came back to Tucson, and I came back, like, because I've spent my life trying to get away from this fucking hellhole. Mm-hmm. And I came back to Tucson, for the express purpose of being with Sharon. Mm-hmm. And, I remember when I came back, I had to tell a lot of my friends, and like, to a certain extent, I'm still telling them, and also my parents. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, because they're all here. It's like, look, guys, like, in some ways, I'm not back.
Yeah.
And I never will be, because mm-hmm. I'm living a completely different life. Mm-hmm. And like, and I will, and if I can get her out of here, like, I will do it in a heartbeat. I love all of you.
I'm trying to work on Owen. I'm trying to work on him. Yeah, I get that.
Well, maybe we'll all go back to Philadelphia together. How about that, Natasha? Oh, we'll get a massive house.
Fucking Philly is just so great. I really do miss it so much.
I loved it when I was there. Like, I remember being in Philadelphia, which I'd never been to before. I've never been to since. But that couple of days I spent there, when you and I met up, mm-hmm. It was so cool.
It's the coolest city.
I really liked it.
Despite my then husband weirdly thinking I was having an affair with you. But, whatever.
So awkward.
Water under the bridge.
I was like, hey, man, I really like your podcast. He's like...
He viewed you with such suspicion, and I didn't get it at the time. I was like, why is he being such a dick? It wasn't until, like, a literal 1.5 years, 2 years later that I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was him. His suspicion wasn't completely off base in general, just in the wrong direction, buddy.
Absolutely.
And way too early. So anyway, back to this story.
There's a story going on here.
Right,
it's
guys?
Not about us.
So Callahan, first he like finds this weirdo footbridge, and then he finds a fucking newspaper. The Lee Brook Register. Callahan had never heard of Lee Brook. No reason he should have. He's no New Jersey scholar, hasn't even been over there since arriving in Manhattan the previous year, but he always thought the town on the other side of the GWB was Fort Lee. And then the headlines, racial tensions in Miami ease. War of kites continues in Teaneck. Hackensack. President Agnew supports NASA terraform dream.
Oh my god, that's speaking of dreams, that's a fucking nightmare right there.
He sees
President
that and he's just
Agnew.
like, I'm sorry, what's that now? I could have sworn I read something terrifying, but that can't be it.
The idea of Spyro Agnew as president is enough all by itself, he thinks, to make anyone with a speck of political sense doubt his sanity. Much like, say, the idea of President Trump.
OMG. Let's just not. I'm just walking right away from that.
That's fine. I'm just like, imagine, you know how this whole time, like, people from the future have been like, you know, like Susanna's been like, Reagan, president, what are you talking about? I'm just imagining, like, going back 20 years and trying to explain this shit to somebody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
Anyway.
So that's what makes him start to think that he's losing it. And then he looks over and he sees like weird vehicles on the bridge and
like with treads.
Yeah, and just overall things are not right. And he wants to keep walking, and a part of him is like, well, what if you can't come back? And he just thinks, oh well.
Yeah. Fuck
what
it.
if? And almost it's like that's the thing that makes him go, is just the idea that he might not be able to come back. And sure enough, he winds up getting a job at a little greasy spoon, and practically every time he wakes up, he's in a different version of the place, and the restaurant is called a different thing.
It's all just little changes, like the bed sheets are a different color, and like, because like the people, it seems like their names stay the same for the most part, which I think is weird. Like, you would think that in a million different realities, some of these people were never born, or like, you know, left town or something.
Let me tell you about something that only somebody who works in food service would worry about.
Okay.
I kept being like, if you wake up in a different version, is the kitchen set up differently? Because knowing where your spatulas are immediately, knowing what drawer the salt and pepper's in, knowing that shit by heart and moving quickly are what make the day go smoothly. And I can't imagine if you walk into your job and everything's in a different place, how fucked you would be. Like, that would just fuck your day right up. I don't care who you are. Imagine, like, you know how that is if you move somewhere new and in the middle of the night you go to the bathroom and you, like, try and turn the handle to the bathroom door, but it's actually, like, a pull door handle, like, or you're somewhere else and the light switch is just on the other side, not the right side.
Yeah, it's interesting because the implication seems to be that nothing, like, the big things change, like whose faces are on money changes, the names of towns change, the name of the president changes, but this dude working in his diner is always going to be this dude working in his diner.
Yeah,
it's an interesting kind of perspective on multiple universes,
right?
You know, because it's like, it's almost like in Doctor Who, how like some events are fixed in time. It's like, no, you can't change that. This always happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it feels like, you know, well, no, this guy's name will always be fucking Dickie Rutabaker, and he will always be working at this diner, which is always in the same building.
Yeah, which is like, because, you know, there's that whole thing with like the multiverse in, is it Marvel or is that DC?
I mean, both.
You know, you go to a different version and somebody's working in an entirely different job and basically has an entirely different personality. But if you go with this kind of model, it's more based on like, no, people are just kind of, their fates lead them in the same direction most of the time, with few exceptions and deviations.
Yeah, which honestly, I'm not sure how much I like, only because it feels like, you know, like, dude, if fucking Agnew's life changed enough that he became president, you know, or like at one point there's a dude who, like, Callahan, the dude named Chadbourne, winds up on the 10, and it's like, who the fuck is Chadbourne? Nobody knows. So like, if if Chadbourne's life changed so dramatically that he ended up on currency.
Yeah, but
like,
those are men who are in a position potentially that is simply at the will of the people or circumstance around them, much more so than most people's.
I guess that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and just have the wrong position, you can inadvertently end up being the one left after this person gets assassinated and that person gets, impeached, whatever. Mm-hmm. I feel like their personality might not be that different. They just wound up there because of circumstance.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. But I feel like that kind of fits the model.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Sort of reminds me of in the Dresden Files, at one point he talks to this being that is able to see people and like from a higher perspective. And he says, and I think I've talked about this before, that people's destinies are like, they're like little channels dug into the earth. And some of them are dug really, really deep. And the water of their lives streams across these channels, and they can dig a new channel in a totally different direction. But it's a ton of work, and most people don't. Most people start on other new channels and barely get anywhere and kind of give up and let themselves fall back into the habits and the lifestyle and the trains of thought that they've always had. And here and there you see somebody who's able to overcome really what sounds just like inertia and move themselves in a totally different direction. But that takes this kind of force of will and focus that just it's not common, you know? Mm-hmm. So I feel like that kind of fits with the way this is going with these different universes and people mostly winding up in the same place. It's just, maybe there are versions where somebody's in a wildly different place, but that is probably pretty tricky to pull off, you know?
Few and far between.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, fair enough. You convinced me. I'm more on board with it now. So anyway, he works for this dude, for this Rutabaker guy for a while. Mm-hmm. And this is when he eventually realizes he's still done got the wanderlust.
Yep.
The itchy foot, as Rutabaker calls it.
Yeah, he has these, like, because really what makes him go on his way is seeing these third tier vampires, right?
Yeah, he sees his first Type 3 vampire waiting in line to buy a movie ticket.
Yeah.
And that's definitely part of it. Mm-hmm. But I think that it feels like just kind of an excuse. Mm-hmm. You know, like, oh shit, a vampire is coming, it's a sign, I must move on. Because, like, when he first gets to these highways, he's described as feeling truly lighthearted for the first time since the day he presided over Danny Glick's grave in the town of Jerusalem's lot. Mm-hmm. So, like, he loves this shit. And they talk later about the highways being addictive.
Yeah, which is super weird.
Yeah.
It's just like a really baffling concept for a place to be addicting, you know, like.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see it. I think
I like it, but yeah, it's strange.
It makes sense to me, but I can't really tell you why. But it does. Anyway, so he moves on, and he's like, you know, if I stop back this way, I'll drop by. And the guy's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's just like, that. Well, you won't, so whatever.
Yeah, you're not coming back. And so he takes off, and he just kind of keeps going to different places. He gets odd jobs. Mm-hmm. He meets people. He kills vampires.
Yeah.
Is essentially what he does for like 5 years.
Although he does say at one point that he lets more of them live than not. Because he's trying not to draw too much attention to himself.
He's trying not to be conspicuous. And he sees the vampires. He sees the dead that Roland and Eddie and our friends saw while they went Todash. Mm-hmm. The vagrant dead. And he also starts seeing these dudes in the yellow coats.
Yeah, which is such a weird thing. Like, I just pictured them all walking around looking like they're in Singing in the Rain. Just kind of like, I mean, you're supposed to be threatening, but I'm not feeling it really, guys.
All walking around doing like April O'Neil cosplay.
You know?
Yeah. But, and he also sees another one of these pet posters. Not for him, though, for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So they're hanging around, and at one point they get so close to him that he has to, like, stop his car and dive off the road.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
I really, really liked this moment because he's, like, basically makes himself think unobtrusive thoughts because he's afraid they'll be able to hear what he's thinking, which is terrifying.
The Elton John song is, like, a really consistent touchstone for him in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Someone Saved My Life Tonight. So he avoids them, and then I love this little tiny bit where he runs into this black guy in a straw hat and overalls.
Yes.
And he's like, he looks so much like this stereotypical dude from a movie that I expect him to have this, like, bizarre accent, or I mean this, like, you know, stereotypical accent, which is even funnier considering it's basically the accent that, like, Detta Walker had.
Mm-hmm.
And the dude, and he goes up and talks to him, and they have, like, a deep conversation about politics based on something the guy heard on NPR.
Yes, I love that. And the guy gives him money.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, seriously, trust me. Like, I can see you, you can't see yourself, and you need this money, buddy. Just take
please
it.
don't tell me you're not on the run. Don't insult my intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a really nice little moment of, like, stereotype subversion.
Yes.
I really liked it.
Agreed.
Yeah, and then he just hangs out. Like, he just keeps doing it for a while until he runs into this other newspaper. I mean, I don't know what else to say about this other part. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's mostly just him, like, trying to do right by getting rid of these vampires, but also he, like, kind of weirdly is rationalizing it and saying things like, well, they were just mosquitoes, you know, no big deal. To which I'm like, I mean, maybe.
I mean, but also they're vampires.
Also, they're giving people AIDS? Hi? Yeah. You did just mention that guy? I don't know.
There's also this interesting moment where he's hanging out with a bunch of illegals in the back of the truck, which I thought was kind of fun. But yeah, he's like, it very much starts to take on the feeling like he's hiding. And the parentheses of the chapter heading is highways and hiding. Right. Like, it's not just the highways that are hiding, it's him. Mm-hmm. And it almost feels like, again, like, maybe in this context, it's not the lost or the abandoned who end up finding these highways. It's those who are trying desperately to run and hide from the world.
I like that idea.
And so he's doing this random job, and this girl comes up to him and gives him a newspaper. Mm-hmm. Because why not? It's in English, and none of the people he's working with speak English.
And so she goes, beaners. And he doesn't want to lose his job, but he also definitely flips her the bird when she turns around and the guys start laughing.
Yeah.
Which is pretty
fantastic.
Great. I love that there's a moment earlier where he's like looking down at the graffiti on the railing of this like mysterious, and it says he saw Freddie and Helena equals true love. He sees kill all Spics and Nigers. The message flanked by swastikas, and wonders at verbal depletion so complete the sufferer cannot even spell his favorite epithets.
That's a burn right there.
That's so good. Verbal depletion so complete. God bless. Yeah. I mean, everybody's been seeing some of those memes going around with people who are like, you know, putting up these signs about looters and it's spelled lauders and shit like this. Like, it's pretty believable.
Yeah. I love that kind of like, that, you know, when someone's like horribly, you know, like conservative or just, you know, kind of shitty like cause is immediately undermined by what they have written on their sign. Mm-hmm. Like, my personal favorite one, I'm sure everybody listening to this has seen it and loves it, is the one with the anti-abortion protester who has the sign that said, if Lily Potter got an abortion, who would stop Voldemort?
Oh my god!
And the response from I think Tumblr or Reddit is like, Neville Longbottom, Jesus Christ, read the book.
Read the fucking books. Oh yeah, that is a good one. I forgot about that. I always like the one. This is America Spec English.
Oh
like,
yeah,
they totally fucking misspell their own shit, trying to shame people who speak more than one language, like your ass can't. Hi.
Right. Or yeah, I'm gonna set the over under on how many languages you speak at 0.5, and we'll see what happens.
Right. But
so
yeah,
anyway,
so that was a nice little moment that I enjoyed.
Callahan is not one of those assholes. He's totally fine with all these dudes, and they're fine with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he opens the paper, and he sees this article about Rowan Magruder, who's his old buddy from home, the guy who ran home.
The place being named home just makes all of our sentences sound like they mean a different thing.
Right.
And you're like, the guy from home, which makes it sound like just somebody from my hometown. And then when you're like, the guy who ran home, it makes it sound like he like ran away because of something and ran home, you know, like.
Rowan Magruder, he was the last little piggy, I believe. Anyway. Yeah, so he learns all the stuff about Mother Teresa visiting and the Newsweek and all that stuff. But what the article is actually about is that Rowan Magruder got assaulted by these Hitler brother dudes. Yeah. The Hitler brothers. And they beat the shit out of him and carved a swastika into his forehead and stabbed him multiple times.
And took his eyes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They blinded him.
Yeah.
I mean, they tacked that on at the end. Oh, yeah, BT Dubs, he was blinded. Holy shit, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, and, you know, the doctor's like, yeah, he's got like a 3 in 10 chance of surviving this.
I love the doctor's quote is, I think of myself as a merciful man, but in my opinion, the men who did this should be beheaded. Fair. Like, yeah, I can, you know, I understand where you're coming from, buddy.
Yep.
So, and he's like, well, is this my Rowan Magruder? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's my guy. Yeah, there's something like a lot of this, he can just tell by gut feeling whether or not somebody is like part of his universe or not. Which I like that, because that's something that actually kept happening in the Bag of Bones book. Was there are things that you kind of want to be like, well, but how does he know though? And King is just like, oh, he just knows. You know, you just know. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I can accept that. It honestly makes sense. Yeah. So Callahan leaves and buys a ticket back to New York. And at this point, Roland is like, I want to hear the rest of this, but let's wait because Jake's going to be here soon. Yeah. And I would really like to see the evil black magic orb you've got before he gets here. Yeah. So let's go do that. That sounds super fun. Yeah. First, they get the map from the kids. Which is amazing, evidently. Yeah, and the girl is apparently smitten with Eddie because, you know, why wouldn't you be? So when he says that this is fantastic, she almost starts crying. It's a close thing. I also like Susanna's line. She just says she can look as much as she wants. Looking's free. Right. And she also says that she's feeling saddle sore. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. So, you know, which I'm sure is definitely all that is, and there's no other plot thread coming into this anytime soon. And she's like, yeah, you know, I'm just going to wait here. And Roland's like, yeah, I mean, you know, if you want. And Eddie's like, holy shit, he's so glad she's staying right here right now. And Eddie's like, are you worried about a miscarriage? And he's like, I'm more worried about it making the thing stronger. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was kind of, when Eddie was like, a miscarriage, or is that what we were, and I was like, oh, that didn't even occur to me. I would be worried that shit would get like stronger. And then he says that a second later, and I'm like, okay, yeah, we're on the same page here. So they go into the church, Roland and Callahan. We also learn in this chapter that the members of the Calla that have not been converted to the man Jesus worship Oriza, Lady Rice.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Which, sure, why not?
Yeah, time to Rice. That was the whole Rice dance, right? It was the dance that he danced.
Yeah, if it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, rice is a big deal around here.
Also, we find out that Callahan can touch holy water.
Yes, and cross himself.
Yep, and, touch the door of a church. So he's basically like, yeah, I think God's given me a little bit of a temporary, a trial period.
He's on probation. Mm-hmm. He's on holy probation.
I like it. So the orb, Roland is straight up terrified of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the kind of scared that you just don't see from him almost ever.
He knows that if Black 13 wakes up and decides to fuck with them, it could just send them places. Mm-hmm. Like, this could, like, at any time on a whim of a thing that's not even fully alive, but still is very much alive enough, their whole thing, they could just be scattered.
Yeah.
And so that's for sure terrifying, because Roland likes being in control.
Hell yeah.
And having this thing around.
Doesn't?
Yeah, right? Having this thing around is like, oh shit, well, I could wake up one morning somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he realizes that was what was going on when he was talking to Walter. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, shit. I went Todash, and I think that was like something that this could do to me is basically send me to outer space.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you know what? Good on you, King, for at least throwing in some retcon shit to make your other shit make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not mad at you.
Yeah. So yeah, they take it out of it's wrapped up in a cloth, and there's a wooden box which is made of black ironwood, which Roland says he's heard of but never seen.
And Callahan calls it ghostwood, which is very funny for me as somebody who is now covering Twin Peaks.
Cool. I don't know what that means, but
it's fine.
I really need to watch Twin Peaks.
Yo, listen. Anyway. You do, but also just skip season 2 entirely. I'm just kidding. Don't really, but it's going to be rough, so just be ready to do other shit while you watch season 2.
Good to know.
I just started season 3, and that shit is amazing. So it comes back to itself, but.
And Roland is like, I kind of want to open it, but I'm not gonna, because that's idiotic.
Yeah, there's a big part of himself that's like, hey, how about you just ruin everything? He's like, well, that's, you make a valid point. The other half of his brain is like, dude, holy shit.
On the top of the box is carved a rose, a stone, and the door. Which I think we've heard those 3 words in combination a couple of times.
Yeah, that's I thought it rang a bell, but can you tell me where, or will that be a spoiler?
Honestly, I don't think it's a spoiler, but I don't remember exactly. I feel like it happens in Jake's essay, or that whole section of the Wasteland.
Oh, okay.
Or the Wastelands. I think, I'm not positive. I just know that I've heard it before.
Well, listeners, hit me up and tell me.
Yeah, if y'all remember where the rose, the stone, and the door have come into this book previously, because I'm 98% sure that it has, let us know. And then there's some weird words on the top also that make that mean unfound. Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know how he knows that, because when we see it, it's like on the top of the box it said this, and there's just these weird swirlies.
But he
doesn't actually say what the language is, he said not what he read, but what his fingertips heard.
And Callahan agrees. Callahan's like, yeah, that's what it says.
And I'm just like,
So
what?
Yeah, it's bizarre. And then he says, a leaf, a stone, an unfound door. There are symbols at a book from my side. Look homeward, angel. Do you know what that is?
Okay. So, again, with the Bag of Bones, Look Homeward, Angel gets mentioned in Bag of Bones as well.
Really?
Yeah. It's a novel by Thomas Wolfe. His first novel, considered highly autobiographical American coming-of-age story.
Okay.
I have never read it, but it is apparently like one of those, like, it's a book reader's book kind of thing, you know? Which
serious book reader's book.
I am not a literary person, as I have come to find out. I'm good with writing. I'm good with language and grammar and whatnot, but I'm not like, I don't read classic novels.
Yeah, dude. Like, I get that. For the most part, I'm like, I totally would if the classic novel had a dragon in it. Like, that's just how I am, you know? Like, I have read a lot of shit, and, like, I've enjoyed, you know, like, what would you say your favorite, like, what's your favorite novel that everyone agrees is a classic?
Little Women, probably.
Okay. I think mine is Catch-22.
Never read it.
Oh, Catch-22 is so good.
Have you read Little Women?
I have not.
Dude.
We should do a book exchange for this.
Book
Natasha.
trade.
Yeah, I'll read Little Women, you read Catch-22.
But I'm also a big fan of Anne of Green Gables and The Secret Garden, which are also classics. So
I have read I have not read Anne of Green Gables. I think I read The Secret Garden. I definitely saw the movie.
Yeah, those are. I like Frances Hodgson Burnett, like just because it's wish fulfillment and beautiful shit. You know, I just like pretty things. But yeah, I'm not like a lot of the more serious adult. Like you'll notice this, the classics that I named are all young adult geared. Stuff that's geared more for adults. I think what my issue is I preemptively decide that they're going to be either depressing or pretentious. And so I just don't do it.
You know, for the sci-fi blog, relatively recently I read Fahrenheit 451, which I'd never read before.
Okay.
And I wrote about this a little bit when I was writing about it on the blog, and one of the things I said is that I feel like some books suffer from being known as classics.
Okay.
Because, like, then when they're only good, you feel disappointed. You know? Like, I read Fahrenheit 451, and I was like, that was fine.
Right.
Like, I thought it was all right.
Well,
you know, like,
oftentimes they're a classic because they're the first of their kind, and then 1,100 people do an of that kind after, and through no fault of the original author, they do it better because they've had more time and have been exposed to more. And so that original, while groundbreaking at the time, fades and feels much more like anemic at times.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of, you know, there are a lot of reasons why I wasn't as enamored of Fahrenheit 451 as I think a lot of people are. But I think another big reason is that sometimes, like, I love message fiction, but message fiction doesn't often age well.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
certainly.
Yeah. Anyway. He brings up this book, which I've never read, by Thomas Wolfe. And Callahan is like, so are you going to take the ball? And Roland is like, have you seen it? And he's like, yeah, it's awful. Are you going to take it?
Yeah, he's like trying to be like, well, you know, are you gonna take it? Like, can you take it like right now? Can you please just fucking take the ball? Oh my, you just take it, Jesus! Like, he's barely keeping it together.
Shirt and like, take it, please.
Yeah.
And the line here is, as if the thing in the box had spoken to them. Do you see how little it all matters? How quickly and easily I can take it all away should I choose to do so? Beware, gunslinger. Beware, shaman.
The abyss is all around you. You float or fall into it at my whim.
Which, like, all right, goddamn.
And they hear the bells while
No
this is
need
happening.
to be a bitch about it.
So yeah, and that's how the chapter ends, with Roland is like, yes, I will, for God's sake, soon. Like, I'll do it soon.
Yeah, and he's
Don't
like...
want to do it soon, but I'll do it soon.
Callahan's like, yeah, I also, like, kind of got told somehow that I should put a cloth over it. And Roland is thinking about the bag that Jake found, and he's like, yeah, I'm not looking forward to, like, transferring that to a different bag. Like, that's
nothing
not going
but
to be
strikes
cool.
at mid-world lanes.
Yep. Which, you know, we know from the flashbacks that even through the bag, when he touched it, the pink one, he felt that shit. Like, if you're just walking into it, they felt the pull when they were miles away. Mm-hmm. He can feel the energy from the thing when he's in the same building. I think it's safe to say, even through a piece of fabric, yeah, he's going to feel something.
Yeah.
So I worry for all of them. It's a really interesting thing, though, because he really continually refers to it as evil.
Yes.
And that's a very specific word to use, you know, like, I can understand it being something that's really, like, tied to the abyss and nothingness and whatever, but that isn't inherently an evil thing. It's just destruction is not inherently an evil thing. You have to have it because otherwise new things can't be made. So it's sort of... I just want to know a little bit more about why exactly evil is what he keeps going for. Is that an actual fair assessment, or is that just colored by our, like, human tendency towards disliking anything that we don't really understand? Death, emptiness, darkness. You know what I mean?
I really thought you were about to say disliking anything black.
Oh, God. I mean, there is certainly some of that, let's be honest.
Well, yeah, I would say that at least a good deal of this experience for him is also going to be colored by his experience with the pink one, which was fucking evil. Like, legit, straight up, that thing was evil.
That's
like,
fair.
It was like, hey, I'm going to steal this woman's life force, and then I'm going to trick you into not being able to save your girlfriend, and then I'm going to make you kill your mom. Yeah. Like, it is really... And that... So, like, for him to have an experience with that one, and then to run into the one that's, like, legendarily bad, I can see how he would immediately jump to that assumption.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, even if he hadn't heard stories about it, it's like, holy shit, there's 13 of these. The 13th one is black, and it's the worst. And like, the one of the ones that isn't that one completely fucked up and ruined my life. So yeah, I can see how Roland is like, and he also has like just a sense of these things, but even if he didn't have one, I would perfectly understand why he would be not okay with evil black orb, and he would be calling it evil. So,
yeah. All right, yeah, you've convinced me. I think that's fair.
Well, good. We had one of those each on this episode.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
It's good. That's the end of this chapter. The next one is the tale of Grey Dick, and I think that'll. I think between the actual chapter and all the jokes we're going to make about Grey Dicks, I think one chapter should suffice us for the next time.
I mean, the first thing I thought of, honestly, and this is so not funny at all, I'm really genuinely not trying to make a joke, but it is fucked up, was the fact that AIDS is playing a part in the story now. And I was just like, is that? And then I realized that Dick was probably somebody's name. But for a second, I was just like, holy shit, is he really? And then I'm like, no, he isn't really, Natasha. Holy shit, Jesus Christ. Like, I have moments that I attribute my own fucking horrible brain to other people. And I have to be reminded, no, that's just you. You're just terrible all alone.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we all have to be reminded of that sometimes.
Yeah.
You're just terrible all alone.
I actually really like this chapter coming up, so I'm really looking forward to digging into it.
Right on.
It's super fun. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to say hi to new patrons real quick, and then we will wrap up. And also, I have a quick announcement. So, new patrons this week are Gabby Mattis, Jack Landis, Nicole Jones, Sarah Wieland, Kristen Collins, Kimberly Slack, Slow 1990. I don't know about that, but that's funny. And Nick Leo all became patrons. So welcome to all of you guys.
Guys.
A few of you are $5 and up, so you are going to be getting access to the Twin Peaks episodes right away. And like I said, I just recorded on season 3 today, which is the new season that just aired. I recorded the first 2 episodes with Maggie because they like got released in a strange, they got released in a strange way. So the first 2 episodes aired together, then the second 2 episodes aired together, but then like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th aired by themselves, and then there was another 2 that aired together. So we're trying to cover them the way that they were released, but it's just so strange, you know. I'm not used to that.
Weird, yeah.
So like I said, I had a hard time with season 2, but season 3 is promising. David Lynch is back on board. I mean, that's all you got to say. That show, that is his fucked up brain on a television screen.
Did he leave for season 2? Is that what happened?
He was gone for an enormous portion of it, and you can tell.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough.
And they didn't want him to direct the 3rd new season, and all the actors were like, fuck you. Season 2 was a nightmare. We're not coming back unless you get him.
I'm like, I have only the barest idea of what Twin Peaks even is, and I'm like, how do you do that without David Lynch?
Right? You don't. That's the answer. Season 2, like, the whole show begins as a murder mystery. Mm-hmm. And then season 2, they just detour for like 20 episodes into the boring lives of these idiot people, and you just don't care at all. And finally he brings it back. Lynch returned for like the last like 2 or 3 episodes of the season, and again, that's what you can tell, because all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, what is this?
All of a sudden it picks up.
So yeah, season 3 has been awesome. I'm very excited about it. I'm really happy to be enjoying the show again, because that was a slog for a minute there. And also, for those of you who are Harry Potter fans, Rashawn and I just recorded the episode covering movies 1 through 3, and that is released only to people who have donated on the GoFundMe for our trip. So if you're interested in donating, it's gofundme.com/unspoiledhpworld. And I will give you access to a Dropbox folder, and we will be putting the next 2 episodes that we record on the last sections of the movies into that folder. So right now, the first episode's in the folder. We're going to be recording the episode covering movies 4, 5, and 6 in about 3 weeks. And then we'll be doing the final 2 movies in 1 episode. And that's going to be in late October, right before we leave for our trip.
Into the Yates era.
I'm super, super excited. I am just, guys, everybody who's donated, seriously, you don't know the kinds of hiccups that Rashawn and I have run into financially. Like, we've had some upheaval, and this literally would not be happening if y'all hadn't been so generous and basically saved our asses. Like, we wouldn't be able to do it, and I think we would both be pretty much heartbroken, you know? There's only so much disappointment that you can take as an adult before you just stop enjoying anything because you don't think anything good will happen anymore. You know, there just comes a point where you're just like, well, I guess life is garbage, and you just sort of sign out.
Yep.
And everybody, you've all given me, like, and this sounds so corny, but y'all have really given me hope. Like, feeling like, hey, maybe everything's not always garbage. Maybe there are cool people who send me $100 to buy donuts and magic wands. Literally, in one of the notes from a donor named Catherine, she was like, here's enough money for each of you to get an interactive wand and buy a Lard Lad donut in the Simpsons section. And I'm like, these are my people. I have found my tribe. When somebody's like, here, take this $100 and buy yourself a donut and a magic wand. Yeah, I think I am doing the job I am meant to be doing, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. So yeah, thank you so much to all of you.
You guys are awesome.
They're awesome. The best.
Yeah, y'all are amazing.
And I have another project that I'm excited to announce that Rashawn and I are going to be engaging on after we're done with Harry Potter, but I'm not going to announce that yet because things went a little bit crazy last time I mentioned it in the group, and I want to have everything in place before I bring it up. But y'all, stay tuned because there's some exciting shit happening coming down the pipe. When I say exciting shit is coming down the pipe, that sounds awful, but you know what I mean. Miles, take it away.
I mean, you never want your shit to be too exciting when it's coming down the pipe.
That's fair. Yeah.
Y'all can listen to me as well as being on this podcast. I'm on the Patrons Only Game of Thrones podcast, which we wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, and I am also one of the hosts of the Smash Fiction podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever it's called, or whatever app or program you use to get that sweet, sweet podcasty goodness into your ears. Smash Fiction is a show where we take fictional characters and smash them together, as the name implies, put them into some kind of conflict with one another. Usually, obviously, there's something linking the two characters in terms of theme or ability, and we argue hilariously and sexily in many cases about who would win. The most recent episode was not very sexy in terms of like actual sexual content, because that'd be weird. But it was a very interesting episode that featured Don Draper attempting to sell perfume to Daria Morgendorffer.
Wow.
And it was a bizarre and funny and wonderful episode. And a lot of weird shit going on in this one. Including, I think that there's at least one capitalist, like anti-capitalist rant from me.
Nice.
In this podcast.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah, so go check that out. I think I might have cut out the bit where I talk about my abiding love for the Bill Hicks stand-up routine in which he encourages everybody working in advertising or marketing to kill themselves.
Yeah, I remember that.
May have cut that out. One of my favorite comedy bits of all time. But anyway, so that's fun. And then that was released this past Sunday. This upcoming Sunday, we have I believe it's a dragon training match between Newt Scamander, or maybe it's a dragon capturing match. Anyway, it's Newt Scamander versus Hiccup Haddock. So
who is Hiccup Haddock?
He's from How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, okay. I've only seen that one time, but it was enjoyable.
Yes. I'm not on that episode, so I don't know how it is, but I assume it's good, and you should go check it out. When it is released on Sunday, Miles, person who releases the episodes. Anyway, wow. Go check out the Don Draper Daria match, and check us out on Twitter and Facebook and all of the social medias. Yeah, and if you want to become a patron, of our show, you can go to you can go to patreon.com/smashfictionpodcast. Got it out. Which is actually the reason that we did Draper versus Daria, and I think it's the reason we're doing Scamander versus Hiccup too, is that these matches were dictated to us by our patrons. So if you want to decide what matches we do on Smash Fiction, then go to damn it, I almost said it again. Then go to notsmashfiction.com. There is no smashfiction.com. Go to patreon.com/smashfictionpodcast and give us some money. I was actually pretty proud of like the advertising copy that I wrote up in my Facebook post about this episode. I was thinking about like reading it. Because it's this whole thing about like how what is Smash Fiction? Smash Fiction is you. It's your lost innocence and your purity. Smash Fiction. Give us your fucking money.
I like it.
Yeah, anyway.
I don't remember being pure. I don't think that was a thing for me.
Check that out. Also, go to my previously mentioned science fiction blog, Universes of the Mind, which can be found at www.universesofthemind.com. Still writing about Robert Heinlein's Double Star on that website right now, so
go ahead and check that out. New entry should be up very shortly because it is almost done, coming out of my brain. So
you are just so eloquent, sir. I can't. Yeah.
I am fucking exhausted. I don't know if that's evident in this episode or not, but I'm just like, I am running.
Look at
essentially.
You can't even say what you are. I'm
running essentially on like leftover coffee and emotional highs. So go find me on the internet. Just go do it. I'm on Twitter too.
Oh,
do it.
Dear God.
Go do the thing at MJ Schneiderman.
I love it.
Oh God! All right.
All right, guys. Hope that you stuck with us through that journey.
Was this the most rambly episode yet?
It might have been. I mean, there's a long period of us being like, so how long did I stay in that town when I was 19? And everybody going, who fucking cares? I care, though.
I love it so much. I'll never forget listening to an episode of the Harry Potter podcast with you and Rashawn. This was years ago. And I'm listening to it, and like you both clearly had a drink or two. Like Rashawn more than you, I think, and you were just like talking for like half an hour about whatever was going on with your lives that week.
Nice.
And I'm like, guys, I fucking love you. I love listening to you talk. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, there was one time where Owen was listening to an episode and I was in the car and we talked for like 20 minutes about the kind of combs we needed for our hair because Hagrid's comb breaks. And I was sitting there like, this goes on a long time. Like, I was like, yeah, I should have cut most of this.
Imagine like editing that going like, wow, really?
Yep.
10 minutes, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
But retroactively, I could have gone back and fixed it. I didn't. Y'all are just going to suffer through it.
I mean, that's part of the charm of this podcast.
Right? Exactly. It's part of our charm. You just have to suffer through us.
It's part of our charm is the fact that we are actually still talking right now, which is kind of unbelievable.
Love you guys. All right.
Bye.
We'll see you next week. What, one more chapter?
One more chapter.
All right, one more chapter next week, guys. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.